Hello, and welcome to the Alliance Wealth Advisors podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cadaro. For episode 5, we are releasing the first of our community spotlight episodes. While the goal of this podcast is to highlight business owners, high performers, and industry leaders to better understand their stories and how they make important decisions, these episodes will be a little bit different. We are a firm focused on partnering with our clients to help them achieve their financial goals, but we know there is so much more to life than planning and investing. We also care deeply about the community in which we live, and we feel we should all have a responsibility to do our part to make it better. For me personally, these values are a big part of why I joined the team. It is for these reasons we will use this platform from time to time to highlight stories in northeastern Pennsylvania that focus on our community. We hope these episodes can provide much needed perspective and help all of us stay focused on what really matters. For this episode, I sat down with Theo and Greg Zayak, founders of the Jude Foundation, which was established in memory of their son. On July 23rd, 2014, their healthy son Jude unexpectedly and tragically passed away at only 3 months old. His life was claimed by a silent killer known as SIDS, Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. Not much is known about what causes SIDS, but it typically strikes children under 1 year of age without notice. The mission of Jude's Foundation is to raise funds to support SIDS research and to enrich the lives of children. To help accomplish this mission, they host a large annual community event, a 5K run walk, followed by a community celebration to promote SIDS awareness and provide a day of family-friendly fun. After 2 years without a race due to COVID-19, it is back in 2022. They started with an initial goal of having 100 people there and raising $1,000. It has since grown to the largest SIDS awareness 5K in the country. They have raised almost $600,000 since 2015, which has gone directly to important causes we discuss in this episode. Theo and Greg share Jude's story, how their mission has evolved, and how they have turned the worst tragedy in their lives into something that continues to inspire and rally our community. We also talk about how their willingness to share their story has helped so many other people who have suffered trauma and tragedy, many of whom they didn't even know. We discuss why we must always remember that everyone is struggling with something, and why today more than ever, a close-knit community is essential so we can help one another pull through the hard times. Greg, Theo, and their families are true leaders who share a message about why we must communicate openly about the hardest things in life. While this was an emotional conversation, it is also one I enjoyed, learned, and grew from. I think you will too. So Greg and Theo Zayak, welcome to the Alliance Wealth Advisors podcast. It's great to have you both here today to talk about the Jog for Jude.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you so much for having us.
So first and foremost, I think, it makes sense to start with the event itself. Obviously 2 years off, along with many things related to the community in the area, just based on COVID and, being careful. But the event's back here in 2022, which is really exciting. And I think, I was interested to hear the changes that are coming to the event. And I was thinking maybe that could be a good place to start in terms of how the Jog for Jude is going to look here in April of 22.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really excited. Like you said, it's the first time in a couple of years that we've been able to do this. Today is almost 2 years to the day that we had to cancel the 2020 Jog for Jude. So it's been a long road back to getting a live event. So we're really excited this year. We're changing things up quite a bit. So typically we have a Sunday morning race. Mm-hmm. So this year we're going Saturday evening. So, nighttime race. We're doing a carnival theme for Jude's birthday. So we have a couple, surprises up our sleeves. I don't know if we'll let them out of the bag yet, mm-hmm. but, some really neat things for the kids in the community. Kind of a re-kick off of the Jog for Jude.
That's great. And what's the date this year?
Yeah. So it's Saturday, April 23rd. Race will start at 6:30 p.m. We'll be there kind of all early evening, afternoon type. So it'll be exciting day.
Great. I think another question I had sort of out of the gates that certainly stuck out to me in preparing to speak to the both of you was just how important this event has been in supporting a few different organizations over the years. And I think, the community certainly is aware of the event in a huge way, which is great. But maybe not quite as much in terms of the support that you've been able to give and the race has been able to give to these organizations. So I was wondering, if you'd be willing to talk about that and the groups that you'll be supporting again this year.
So actually, one of the things that I don't think we do a great job of advertising is that we have a named fund at the Boston Children's Hospital. So what that means is there is actually a fund called the Jude Fund, and you can donate directly to it at Boston Children's Hospital. So that was a really big sort of landmark fundraising event for us. It was when we donated over $100,000 to the hospital. And that's not something that we talk about often enough, I think. So we will continue to support Boston Children's Hospital. We have been to Boston Children's Hospital. We've brought our children. Dr. Goldstein, who was at the race in 2020, has been a wonderful support for us. And, that he's kind of our touch point at Boston Children's. But we've seen the labs and we've met the doctors and we've met other SIDS parents. They usually invite us when they have, any kind of academic talk about SIDS or SUID, sudden unexpected infant death. So I think that we should put that out there more and talk about that more.
Definitely.
Also, with the pandemic and social distancing, a lot of Boston Children's Hospital efforts were put on hold. So it's even more important that we continue to support them and don't forget about them and, help them push all the stuff that they were working on pre-pandemic forward. So that's really important to us and special to us. And then locally, we support the St. Joseph Center Baby and Children's Pantry. So actually, if you walk into the baby pantry, they did a really nice dedication to Jude. They have his picture in the lobby. And that was one of the first places that we had thought of when we were, trying to determine the best way to kind of distribute the funds to the kids in our community. And we went on a tour, Greg and I, and we were blown away. And I always say this, and I'll keep saying it. If you haven't, if you live locally and you haven't gone on a tour of the Baby and Children's Pantry and seen what they do and all the people that they serve, it is incredible. It is things that, we have lived here all of our lives, essentially, and we didn't know. We didn't know all of the wonderful things that they do, all of the people that they serve. So that was really touching for us. And, forever going forward, that is something that we want to continue. We can't buy diapers for Jude. We couldn't. That was kind of cut short. We couldn't buy baby food for him. That was cut short. So being able to provide that stuff to children who wouldn't have it is really meaningful, and has continued to be meaningful. But yeah, their services are seemingly endless. And I would advise you, if you haven't taken a tour or gone to see all the hard work that they do, or if you haven't volunteered, to absolutely do that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the work that they do is unbelievable. And it has become magnified during the pandemic as well. The need is much higher, much greater. And just going back to the named fund at the Boston Children's Hospital for a second, that was a really cool thing. They don't do that for everybody. You have to give $100,000 in a single year to be able to get a named fund. So it's kind of the whole thing of when Theo and I started to think about what we would do after Jude's death. The big thing was his legacy, creating a lasting legacy. And you see that at Boston Children's Hospital now with that named fund. There's kind of a permanency to that. as well as at St. Joseph's Baby and Children's Pantry. When we walk in and see his picture, those are things that are really neat and special to us. And one other local cause that we've supported, at least in the very first year of the Jog for Jude, we helped in the creation of a splash pad at Sherwood Park in Dunmore. So that's another lasting legacy.
Absolutely.
Kids love going up there, seeing Jude's name on the splash pad. So for me, it's about solidifying his legacy.
Yeah, and those things will be there, long after we're gone.
Yeah, that's the hope. Yeah,
which is crazy to think about. This is such a great event, and the causes that you just mentioned that have been supported and grown due to what you've created and what your friends and family have been able to rally around from just a horrible tragedy. I think before we get into the story of the event, before we get into the evolution of it moving forward, would love to hear more about Jude as a person, his story, your experience as his parents, and why preserving that memory, like you mentioned, is so important to both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Jude was a really special little boy. I remember the day he was born. It was this so bright, beautiful spring Saturday. It was Holy Saturday, and he brought so much light into our lives. He was our second child, our second son, and he was just so chill. Like, he just was so chill. He would, he looked up to his big brother, Greg, who was about 3.5 years older. And he would just watch Greg just kind of carry on, be, a 3-year-old boy. And we did a ton of stuff in our lives during that period, right after Jude was born. Like, we went to zoos, we went to baseball games, we went on trips, we went to the beach. We did all this stuff that was really, when you look back on it, it's like, wow, I can't believe, we were able to jam that into 96 days that we had with Jude. But it was such a special time, and we just felt complete, or at least I did. I remember saying, like, this is like, it was tough to put into words, but it was just, everything just came naturally with Jude. Life just seemed to be, you hear about, like, having a second child and how crazy things could be, but he was so chill that it was like almost easy. And those were some of the great memories that I'll keep for a long time.
Yeah, I might cry. I'm already crying.
Me too.
I'll try to hold it together a little bit, but yeah, it's funny. Greg talks about, like, feeling complete. Obviously, I remember the day that Jude was born, Holy Saturday. We got to pick that date, sort of, because he was a scheduled C-section. So I loved the sound of his birthday even before he was born, because we picked it. I loved his name, Jude Theodore. Very excited. Little Greg was so excited for this baby to be born. He wanted Grace Zach, because that's what Jude was going to be. If he was a girl, his name was going to be Grace Zach. And it was not Grace. It was Jude. And I remember he came to visit, and he had on a superhero Big Brother cape. And he was like, I think it's a sister. And we were like, no, it's a brother. He's like, that's okay. I think it's a sister. But Greg talked about, like, feeling complete. And when we were having Gregory, that was like a totally different experience. It was an unplanned pregnancy. We had to move our lives. We had to move where we were living, kind of change plans. There was just a lot of change and decision making and kind of upheaval involved with that pregnancy. So with Jude, we planned the pregnancy. We were second-time parents, so we weren't as nervous. We had bought our first house. We were established as a family. We felt really in control,
right?
Which is hysterical to think about now, because we were not, and we never are. But we felt really, really, really in control. And he was such a good baby. He was not fussy. He slept. He ate great. He was super fat. He was my biggest
giant,
baby.
yeah.
He was 9 pounds, 6 ounces when he was born. And when he passed away, he was like close to 17 pounds to the point that the hospital was sort of confused about how old he was. But he was just sweet. And I think that all of those things, us feeling in control, us feeling complete, his demeanor, all contributed to the wonderful things that we were able to do with him.
Yeah.
Throw him in an ergo and take him down to the beach. All of those things that we did. We would go out to dinner, try to find a place to go out to dinner after he passed away. And it was like, there's not a restaurant that we didn't take him to. Like, it's just crazy because he was only here for 96 days. But he was just so easygoing, and so sweet and so fat. And he had dark black hair, which is unusual because none of our other children have dark black hair. And he was just a joy and loved his brother.
It's a beautiful way to think about him. And it sounds like stuff's just you were sort of just able to go with the flow in a way that maybe is hard to imagine when you have two young boys, two young Zayak boys.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, one thing I wanted to make sure we spoke about, sort of in a different light here is SIDS. And the reason I thought that was important is because just thinking of my memory of all of this, and I didn't know what it was. And, I think there's still a lot of people who aren't really sure, what SIDS is and how it can happen. And, even in the medical community, we talked a lot about that, how it's just not studied and the reasons why. Can you talk about that, and why part of the goal of the Jog for Jude and this whole, mission of you and your families have undertaken is about changing that and raising awareness when it comes to SIDS?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I'll start with that.
Yeah.
So talking about SIDS is very, very uncomfortable. It's ugly. It's sad. People don't want to think about it. People don't want to think about children dying. They certainly don't want to think about their own children dying. And it's loaded with things like blame and guilt. When Jude passed away, one of the positive or lucky things, which is crazy to say, was that he wasn't with us. We have talked to so many people that lost children to SIDS that were in their care, and it looks a lot different than our day looked. As far as like investigations and, removing cribs and just like trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. So one of the lucky things for us is that he was not in our care. So we didn't have to do, some of what other SIDS parents have gone through, right, as far as like having authorities come in and tear through their kids' stuff. Same for, the day before Jude died, my mom was babysitting him. And she still says to this day, like that could have been me. He was asleep in a stroller because she took he and Greg to the playground at the DEC. So she was like, what if I walked over to the stroller and he was gone, So it's really ugly. It's really sad. People don't want to think about it. And people want to blame people. I still a lot of days feel very angry. And this isn't the day that he died, he was at daycare. I just shared with you that I was at the daycare reading today. This isn't an argument about, the care that he was receiving at the daycare. Obviously, I still have friends and family members that send their kids there, right? If I didn't trust them, that wouldn't be the case.
Right.
If I didn't trust them, I wouldn't continue to send Gregory there. And I did. They had a wonderful experience and they were wonderful people that a terrible thing happened to. So I think that it's just so painful. It's just so uncomfortable. Even if it hasn't happened to you, it's difficult for people to talk about because it's like they're afraid to catch it or something.
Yeah.
They're afraid if they talk about it, they'll put it out into the universe for themselves or something like that. So I think that that's why, Greg and I have talked about this all the time. Once we started talking about it, so many people have told us, my brother died of SIDS. My aunt died of SIDS. My dad had a sister that died of SIDS. Nobody talked about it.
Right.
Part of it was the guilt and the shame and somebody did something wrong, which we know is not the case. And the other part of it is, you don't want to make people feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
But believe me, we don't forget. If you say something to us about Jude, you're not making us sad. We did not forget.
Yeah.
Every morning when we wake up, we remember. So, I think that people are afraid of being uncomfortable. And we have learned that most people are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be uncomfortable. And it's actually important to be uncomfortable because it pushes the conversation forward about SIDS. I can't tell you the number of friends that I have that will send me a picture of their crib. And to be perfectly blunt, Jude didn't die because of an unsafe sleep situation. He was in a pack and play with just a sheet. So, but that being said, safe sleep is still a big part of SIDS because as far as we know from our conversations with Dr. Goldstein, there are children that are prone to SIDS, right? So why wouldn't you do everything you can to keep them safe?
Yeah.
But I can't even tell you the number of friends who will send me a picture of their crib. Is this okay? Or, what do you think about this? Or, an owlet or some kind of monitor or, and it's amazing to me because I'm happy to answer. I'm certainly no expert. I'm just a regular mom. And I certainly don't always make the most perfect choices for all my children because being a mom is hard and you're tired. But maybe they wouldn't have asked someone.
Yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't have considered it, but now they are.
Right.
So that's important too.
And I think that's a big reason why we've been kind of so public with sharing Jude's story, sharing our story. Because I remember when Jude first died, we didn't know how to process it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the grief was just overwhelming, and there wasn't a venue or so active support group to really share stories or to just talk with people who had gone through something similar. And for a lot of the reasons why Theo just mentioned. And so and there's been smaller organizations like ours throughout the country. And I say smaller because there's no real national SIDS organization, right? So we've kind of said, all right, well, we'll share our story. And the response has been just overwhelming of how many people have gone through something similar, and will message Theo, complete strangers, and just to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a huge part of why because it definitely didn't come naturally, and it wasn't something that we anticipated when we started the Jude Sayak Foundation, but it became clear that there was a need for it in the SIDS community. And then, the other side of it, why we decided to continue the Jog for Jude, because when we started Jog for Jude, we didn't necessarily envision it being a continuing event. But there's like 300 causes that are supported by the National Institute of Health. Excuse me. Government causes, right? That grants and so forth are gone through. And SIDS is like at almost the very bottom of that list. It's in like the bottom 5%. And the amount of money that goes towards SIDS research, which claims like, depending on your sources, somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 kids every year, is just like mind-boggling. There's no money going towards it. So it's that's where we felt we could have an impact. And we, through the help of the community, we've raised a ton of money and are trying to support that research and fight the cause.
And as importantly, to the points you guys just made, start that conversation in the public square in a way that it hasn't been happening prior to all of this. So how did you come up with this idea of a race in Jude's memory? Can you bring us back to that period of time? I'm sure it's hard and you were still grieving, and but you and your families put a huge event together in really what was an incredibly short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, being the avid runner that I am, so we had no idea really what to do. We knew we wanted to do something. And as we had kind of researched, right, Googled, SIDS, remembrance, celebration, a lot of it seemed to be centered on the first birthday. And that's kind of a big milestone also for parents of rainbow children. So children that are born after they've lost a child to SIDS is like making it to that first birthday. And Jude's first birthday, April 19th, 2015, was a Sunday. And we wanted to have some kind of community event. We were kind of having thrown the idea of a community birthday party. And then somebody mentioned like a 5K, and none of us in the room knew anything about it, but we all said, yeah, that's a great idea. So we thought between the Zayak and the Wallaces, we have a pretty big family. We could probably get, 250 people there. Scranton Running told us maybe like 100 people, but we were confident, our family would show up. And, we planned this basically in about 100 days, started around the beginning of the year. And as the registrations started to go up and we started to share our story on social media. So social media has really been a huge, vehicle for us. We got to the point where like, okay, we think too many people are registering. We had like 1,000 people register. We're like, the whole total focus changed from like raising money, getting people there, to be like, where are all these people going to park? Do we have porta potties? Like the logistical reality
things
would never have come to mind.
Yeah. And it was just, I just remember, I actually stumbled upon like a text a couple weeks ago of like during this time, because there was a core group of us that were working seemingly like around the clock on this. And it was so cool to like be part of that. Because again, our expectations were so low. We had no idea what to expect. And we ended up having like over 1,300 people that registered for the race.
Wow.
I think we raised $75,000. And kind of the rest was history, I think.
Can you talk about how your family and friends and frankly the community at large, probably a lot of people who you didn't even know particularly well, identified with this in a big way, kind of right out of the gates, because that's certainly from where I was sitting and I was out of town at this point. But that was very clear to me, even from a couple hours away.
Yeah, well, actually, kind of like the very beginning of the story of how we came up with the 5K is our friend Jenna started a GoFundMe for us. And it was sort of, little Greg was 3.5. He was in preschool, right? So one of the biggest preschools in the area. So he had his little friends. And I think that the parents were stunned. They were sad and they wanted to do something to help us and they didn't know what to do. I remember that they dropped off like a bag of toys for little Greg, and then Jenna started this GoFundMe. So we were looking at this GoFundMe and it raised like over $30,000. And that's where we really decided, like, okay, we have to do something. Because at that point, I wanted to just crawl into my shoe and die. I wasn't really talking to anyone, certainly wasn't interested in showing up to a Drug for Jude with 1,000 people. But we were lucky in we didn't need that money. We both had jobs and the funeral home was wonderful to us. We were able to bury our son and we didn't need that money. So we decided we have to do something with this money. We have to help these people that have helped us so much. So that's kind of where this conversation about having some sort of event even started, because we wanted to use the money to give back, to keep paying it forward, because it was kind of a way of people showing us that they cared and that they didn't know what to do, but here was something.
Wanted to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was really amazing because, right off the bat, that was really what started this whole thing was that GoFundMe and the community support and all the kind messages. And besides that, on the day of all the people showing up, I think, Greg and I joke about this all the time. I was threatening not to go. There was no way I was going. I am an introvert. I've had like the same 3 friends for my whole life. So I wasn't interested in doing this. And the reason, obviously, I wanted to remember my son and obviously wanted to honor his life. But the reason that it's become so important is because people would walk up to me and say things and I'd be like, oh my gosh, wow. Like this is about even more than Jude. This is therapeutic for other people and their own traumas. And yes, they're showing up for us, but they're also showing up for themselves and they're showing up for their families. And, it's something that's bigger than us and bigger than him. And I think that is what really motivates us, or me at least, I would say, to keep going, that it's really about all of these individuals in the community. It's not just about us.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, and I think this is very natural when any tragedy happens. People just want to help. They don't know what to do, and I'm the same way, right? You don't know what to do. There's only so many things you can say to someone. And I think in our case, after Jude died, people donated. People said, "Yeah, we'll go to the Drug for Jude. That's a great idea." Or whatever the case was. But I think they just were kind of motivated, kind of by the call to action to come to this event, and we just never expected it to be that big. And then I think as the years have gone by, it's turned into, I think something that's really cool is you'll see people at Drug for Jude and they'll kind of either have made their own shirts or signs or whatever. And they're there to celebrate their son, their daughter, their friend, whoever it is, somebody that they've lost to SIDS. And I think mothers in particular are touched by this event because, there's as Theo said, motherhood is difficult and challenging. And there's so many that have lost, whether it be a baby that didn't make it through pregnancy or a baby that was lost early in life. And it's kind of their way of at least the way I interpret it, their way to remember all their children.
Yeah. Talk about that first race day. So, wasn't something you were excited to get out of bed and go to and smile all day, I'm sure. But well, there's probably a beautiful thing as much as it was, a near impossible thing to do.
Yeah. So I can talk about my experience of the first race day, and Greg's experience were very different. So I could just share mine and then he could probably share his. But when Jude passed away, we actually moved into my mom's house. I, kind of refused to go back to my house. So we moved into my mom's house. Greg always says that was like one of the best times of his life because he had like 3 squares and my mom would make his bed and iron his clothes and all the stuff I don't do. So we were staying at my mom's. I don't know if we were still staying at my mom's or if we were doing a bathroom reno, but we were living at my mom's. And my friend Maddie, my best friend Maddie, who runs our social media, was staying there too. And I remember being upstairs and just hearing my mom say, she has to go, Maddie. She has to go. We got to get her out of this house. She has to go. She can't not show up. Everyone was just like so stressed about if I was going to show up to the jog for Jude. So it was very emotional. I would say that our coping skills were not that they're ever great. Even now, 8 years later, they're not great, but very raw. I mean, we were sad. We were grieving. We didn't have like the tools or the words to say exactly what we were feeling yet. And my sister-in-law was in labor. So we were, there was just like all kinds of emotions. We laughed because she was kind of refusing that she was in labor the day before, because she wanted to be there and wanted to help. And then she went to the hospital overnight. So it was crazy because, Greg talked about like the logistics. There was like real issues that we had to deal with. Like we had people coming and we needed to put them somewhere and be organized. So we couldn't just be sad. And also there was all the emotions, from Jude's first birthday and him not being here. And also my niece arriving on Jude's first birthday. So emotions were very high. But Greg's experience was different because he woke up at like 5 a.m. and went to do work. So he could talk about that part of it.
Yeah. My biggest thing was just like kind of getting the race started. So my mindset leading up to around 9 o'clock when the race started was more business-like. Like, okay,
there's stuff we got to do.
Exactly. And if we expect people to come back, if we're going to do this again in the future, we can't screw it up. Like we can't like have people running into each other on the race course and cars like parked on the street and blocking. So I was kind of like very focused on the task at hand, which for me was starting the race. So yeah, I was there like super early in the morning and just trying to get a handle on where things should be. And I'll never forget. So we had scheduled to start the race at 9 o'clock, and I think we started like at 9:03 or 9:07, or I think it was 9:03, which coincidentally was the like moment that my niece was born.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, she like was delivering her when the runners were taking off. Like it was right around 9 o'clock.
That is incredible.
Isn't that crazy?
It really is.
Which I didn't know till maybe like a half hour later. But and I remember just like starting the race at the front. We took a real cool picture at the start line from a drone, and starting the race, and then kind of going to the side and just watching all the people go by, and this like wave of emotion just like kind of came over me, and it like resonated with me, just like how all these people had some other plan, like 100 days ago for this day, and they decided to come here and be with us and remember Jude, and it was just like unbelievable to see.
Yeah. So the transitioning, I think it's been interesting as the event then really took off from there, and then you were forced to step back. these last 2 years to some degree. And as you have reflected on that and then been able to kind of reset and look forward, I know one thing you mentioned is sort of the mission has changed. It's become bigger than Jude now. It's it's not just necessarily a celebration of him and his life, but so much more. So how do you think about this period where you've been able to reflect and where you want it to go from here?
Yeah, I've missed it. I've certainly missed it. There's a lot involved behind the scenes, getting sponsorships and kind of all the logistical stuff and the coordination of it. It's a really big undertaking for, like this 4-hour event, 5-hour event. But it is so worth it to me, like that. It's like a holiday for us, obviously it's a big deal.
And for your families and the all of the volunteers involved, I'm sure they feel like that too.
Yeah. It's so I know people have said to me that they're really looking forward to being back, and it has always been this kind of like kickoff to spring in my mind. Just the time of the year, the natural tendency. It's we, knock on wood, we've had I probably shouldn't have done that, but we've had a really good weather for the most part at all the Jog for Judes. So it's just always kind of been this nice kickoff in the spring, and I feel like it will be even more so, this time around, just because we haven't had it. But I've kind of thought about it in the sense that, like, it was a good point you made. Like, it's bigger than Jude, and it's and now, as opposed to something that we were kind of asking the community to do, I feel like it's almost turned the other way, and people will be like, when's the Jog for Jude? We want to get involved, blah, 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 which is really amazing to see. It just speaks to the community that we live in Northeast Pennsylvania in general. Yeah. Just everybody kind of has that special thing inside them that makes them want to help. So now I kind of feel like, an obligation to the community to put on a good event and, make sure the kids and everybody who's there has a good time.
So nothing will ever compare ever in my life to when we were preparing for the first Jog for Jude. The time that our families spent together. Like hours and hours and hours and hours of days. And, out like my nieces and nephews thought that they were first cousins with Greg's nieces and nephews. And, the families really kind of like melded, and, there's all the same personalities and tempers and all the things that come with being part of a big family. But it was something that we were all working towards, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I'll never forget that time. And as the years have gone on, that wasn't like sustainable.
Sure.
First of all, it's kind of like a well-oiled machine, or it was by the time 2020 rolled around. So we don't need all those man hours. And also it's not sustainable. We can't just hang out with each other and talk about parking, for 4 hours every Sunday. But that like common goal and the meetings, and even though they're shorter, even though it's kind of this well-oiled machine, just working towards that event, working towards that together for our families. I didn't realize how much I missed that. So I'm excited for that. And also for me, I really, really, really genuinely love seeing all the kids at the Jog for Jude.
Yeah.
And even especially kids that like would be Jude's peers, like my friends' kids who are his age. I'm like so invested in their lives. It's never like sad or bittersweet for me. It's always wonderful. I love, seeing what they're into and seeing what they're doing and seeing how they're growing. So I think that that's like therapeutic for me. And not having that the last 2 years is actually sad. So there will be even more little kids, that were born, all these pandemic babies.
Mine included.
Yes, yours included, your baby girl included. To just be able to experience it and see them and, again, just carry on the legacy. But yeah, so. And
it's changed its meaning for so many, newer parents, like me too. We were there the first year and everything, and it was a great event, but things change when you become a parent. And, so, I think there's a lot of people who have moved back, who have become parents. Even those who haven't moved back will come home, for this event, which is just so incredible. So that evolution, I think, is really interesting, and just the sheer scale, as this evolves. But talk about how it's grown, not that this is about the money, but monetarily, and you alluded to it a little bit before. It really is crazy. You were trying to get 100 people, to come take a walk, take a jog, and maybe we raise $1,000 and go to breakfast after.
Yeah. And
it's certainly been a different story from that. Can you talk about that and give listeners an idea as to, what this has been able to accomplish?
Yeah, sure. So, throughout the lifespan of Jog for Jude, which this would be the 8th Jog for Jude, we had a virtual one last year and then nothing really in 2020. We've raised over $650,000 net. So that's $650,000 that we've given to Boston Children's Hospital, to St. Joseph Center, to Sherwood Park. So that's a huge number. And for perspective, the first race raised about $75,000, and the 5th, or the last in-person race, raised $150,000.
Wow!
So we basically doubled in 5 years. So kind of have to reset our expectations a little bit. I'm not sure we could grow at that same pace, but it's crazy to think. Kind of one goal that I had in my head at some point was by the 10th year we would have raised $1 million. So I think that may still be within reach, but it's really grown so much. And in terms of the sponsors that we've gotten involved, a lot of different great companies that have that we've partnered with, and a lot of different kind of creative ways. So that really has been amazing to see. And in terms of the people, the runners and walkers that come out, I think our last race we had just under 2,400 people registered. So, it's the largest SIDS 5K in the country, which is really cool, really neat to have that in terms of participants. And it's just the growth has been crazy. So we're excited to kind of get back into it and see kind of what the response is. I always say, like, I'm kind of shocked at the amount of people every year, but I really shouldn't be, because this community has been so good to us. I think they have demonstrated that they'll support us and support Jude, really almost no matter what. So it's really cool.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, how has it been sort of taking you've almost indirectly become leaders in a lot of ways for people who have suffered trauma, who have suffered tremendous loss, maybe, without even realizing it to some degree. But you've mentioned a couple times just how much this has opened people up, oftentimes complete strangers, to maybe talk about things that are with them that they haven't been able to address in a productive way. Can you talk about that and how this has led to sort of this idea of communicating and opening up, talking about hard things for a lot of people?
Yeah, sure. That's very nice that you're saying that about us. We don't think of ourselves as leaders in that way. But I think that it just totally changed our worldview. And we talk about this all the time. There's no like trauma competition.
Right.
If you feel sad, then you feel sad. And that's really valid. But I think that because we had this horrific thing happen to our family, we're a little bit jaded, a little bit bulletproof, which helps make us more comfortable with talking about hard things and recognizing that people are going through hard things and life is really hard. And what good are we doing by ignoring that and expecting people to function? When I was still working when Jude passed away, and the most influential people were the people who just honored that I was going through something hard. They didn't necessarily know what to say. They didn't necessarily know what to do, but they never tried to make it go away.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the most important lesson, one of the most important lessons that I learned. I had an HR director that if I was a total mess, she would just walk by and close my door. She could have said, go home or, get it together, but she didn't. She just recognized it, that I was having a hard day, and didn't try to make it better, didn't try to make it go away. Just kind of honored it. Like said, yeah, this is hard. This sucks. And you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
So I think that in our own lives, that was, one of the big things that we wanted to instill in our children. This kind of, yes, like grit and resiliency, because that's so important, because life is hard, but also being able to say, this is hard. This sucks. I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
In my job now, currently, I always joke I'm sort of like a little bit eccentric for my, I'm an accounting professor, and you don't usually think of accounting professors as talking about your mental health, but I do. I check in with them. Maybe they haven't lost a child, but they're going to college during a pandemic. It's hard. It's traumatic. And I think that it's kind of given us this new worldview. Let's talk about this. Put it out there, because we're not looking for people. No one can make Jude come back. No one can do that. So we're not looking for people to make us feel better, because we're not going to feel better. We're just looking for people to say, like, oh yeah, your son died. That's really hard. I'm really sorry that happened to you. And that's all. I would argue that a lot of people that have experienced trauma want, just acknowledgement.
And that uncomfortableness initially, without it, you can't grow from it.
Absolutely, you can't grow from it. My son, I'm sure he'll write a book about me someday and how nuts I am, my oldest son, because I'm like so crazy. And the things that I talk about with him, most people would probably find alarming. But I talk to him about everything. Like literally nothing is off limits. Nothing is off limits. I talk to him about everything, like to a fault. And it's because I want him to know, like I want him to hear it from me, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. There's things that are hard, and there's growing pains, and relationships are hard, and friendships are hard, and life is hard, and school is hard, and we're not learning. We're not getting better if we're not talking about it.
Yeah. So as you look ahead now to this next phase, and we've talked about Jude's legacy a couple times, but what does that look like in your eyes for each of you looking ahead now? And you've been great with your time. I don't want to take up too much of it, but I think that maybe that could be a good place to sort of end, where talking about what that looks like moving forward with this sort of reset we've had? Maybe it's different. Is it different than it was a couple of years ago, or is it the same?
I think one thing that is pretty big for me is just not taking anything for granted. So we've talked about losing the Jog for Jude. So that in itself was traumatic for us for 2 years.
Sure.
So it's kind of echoes back to that. And I don't know what the future will be. I know that it'll be continuing to grow Jude's legacy, Jude Zayek Foundation, however that looks, and continuing to try to give back to the community, and the children that maybe are less fortunate or in need of help. So I think that's kind of always been our overarching theme, and we'll continue to grow that way, whatever that'll look like. But I want to make sure that we don't take for granted that this year's Jog for Jude and what we have in front of us.
I mean, I would hope that the Jog for Jude as an event in Delmar, Pennsylvania continues every year. Selfishly, I hope that, my kids may put it on when they're adults. But I hope that science ends SIDS, whether it's finding what is, wrong medically with these babies, or, things like the bassinets and monitors. And, I hope that science is able to eradicate SIDS as we know it today. I hope that as a community, we're never okay with children not having food or diapers. I hope we never get complacent with that ever. And I hope that people continue to think of Jude. And, I know that like people outside of our family talk to him. I remember when I was, like very early on in my grief, I would talk to Katie Reap. I would think of her often. She didn't know it, but she got me through a lot of very dark days. And I hope that people think of Jude in that way. Consider him, somebody that's looking out, or somebody that didn't get to do what they're doing. And I would hope that, his siblings and his cousins would keep that legacy going for quite some time.
So where can listeners, who have heard this story, and I hope it's many who maybe haven't heard all of it before, where can they support you guys? Where can they support the Jude Zayek Foundation and the race? How can they find you, and what can they do leading up to the race day as you guys try to build this momentum and bring this incredible cause to more people this year?
Yeah. Sign up for the race. Come enjoy the Jog for Jude, especially if you've never been before, because I think it's a really unique event. Everything's kind of online. JudeZayekFoundation.com is our website. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, runsignup.com. You can just Google Run Sign Up Jog for Jude to sign up for the race. Sign up early. We have nice, comfy T-shirts that I've been fighting for a few years. We had them last year. That's kind of become a neat thing too. Seeing the T-shirts in the community. I have people that send me pictures of their Jog for Jude T-shirts throughout the years. They have them all. So Instagram, Facebook is the easiest way. Or JudeZayekFoundation.com or runsignup.com/Jog for Jude. Great. Yeah, and if you're a professional, business owner, look to partner with us as a sponsor. I think I think we offer a lot of great opportunities to those in the community. So a lot of that information is on our website, like I said. But I feel obviously that it's a great partner. It could be a great partnership. So,
well, Theo and Greg, thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's benefited me and it'll benefit, so many other people and continue to in the years to come. So thank you both again.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Michael.
much
Appreciate
for
it.
having us, Michael.
The information on this podcast was created by Alliance Wealth Advisors and published for informational purposes only. The guest on this episode was not a client at the time of this interview and did not receive any compensation. For more information, please visit alliancewealthadvisors.com.